everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is Nate and Francis. Nate, how's summer doing over there on that side of the pond?
Well, we're very far north and we're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So periodically you get some beautiful summer weather, and then other times you get huge gusts of nightmare North Atlantic weather like we had yesterday, where it was like probably about 58 or 59 and just rainy the whole day. And very windy too. So yeah, it sucks. But today's beautiful. It's just everything's drying out because it was so wet yesterday. So lovely day in the North Atlantic, I suppose. You know, a lovely day in Britain, where Boris Johnson is probably going to become the prime minister because we can't have nice things. We can only have dumb things. It's incredible. Life goes on.
It's incredible that we both still live in these countries in which, like, it's like you could have something nice, but like rather than something nice, we have to have something incredibly stupid instead.
Yeah, so we had an episode of Trash Future where we were joking about this, where, you know, there's this notion that among some people, I'm not going to say on the left, but just like in general, people who support Jeremy Corbyn, that all that has to happen is Jeremy Corbyn can get in number 10, and then all he has to do is push the lever that's in there that's currently set to neoliberalism. If you just push the lever up to socialism, then socialism happens. And obviously the joke is that that's next to the Stop Brexit button, which he refuses to press. A number of dumb jokes, but then Milo made the comment that actually there's three buttons or you know, apparatuses like this in number 10. There's the socialism neoliberalism lever, there's the Stop Brexit button, and then there's the racism button that's been pushed so many times that the text has been worn away on it, and everyone just knows it as the button you push all day. And basically that's Boris Johnson in a nutshell, that you could have nice things in this country, but the Conservative Party is a bunch of basically dying boomer racists howling at the setting sun who are just like, we need more racism, even if it's completely farcical. And so that's what's going to happen.
Well, look, racism was good enough for my father and my father's father, and God damn it, it's good enough for you, boy. So you get out there and you yell at some immigrants. All right,
all right. Listen. All right, you know, this country is falling off because it's lost the Dunkirk spirit, which in my brain, the Dunkirk spirit means yelling the N-word. I don't know what it means in other people's brains, but to me, that's what Dunkirk was really about.
Yeah, Dunkirk was all about getting shot and being incredibly racist towards everybody.
I just laughing. I hate plugging the other show, but Milo had this other comment that I just remember that sticks to me all the time, is that people talk about Dunkirk as this amazing feat of British innovation, British, pluck, when in fact it was the government completely fucked up, left their entire army abandoned to the Nazis, and just a bunch of dudes who fish just came to their rescue. And if that's your plan, that fishermen are going to save you, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah. If we were to use Boris Johnson as like the next Dunkirk, we're basically hoping that fishermen will come and just throw a bunch of mackerel at number 10 until Boris Johnson goes away. Like that's the hope, because it's like, well, we really dicked ourselves into this into this situation here. Hopefully somebody will sit there and some great music will swell and they'll save us from ourselves. But what's actually going to happen is y'all are going to get Brexited, and everybody who needs insulin is going to die. And it's going to be kind of a like, oh, wow, like in 50 years, everybody's going to be like, so anyway, that's when America and England ran out of people to do ethnic cleansing on, so they ethnically cleansed themselves.
I mean, so on one hand, it fucks everyone in the United Kingdom, not just in England. But I also feel like even though you tend to use those interchangeably, but it's actually appropriate in this situation because Brexit is 100% the English being insane. Like the only, it was a kind of a squeaker. It won in Wales, but in Northern Ireland, it did not win. In Scotland, it definitely did not win. If they had allowed British citizens who were living in the EU to vote in the referendum, it probably would have skewed it more towards Remain. Basically, Brexit is a vote of primarily, I mean, on one hand, it's people who were affected by austerity, and the media in this country blames everything wrong with the country on immigrants in the EU. But on the other hand, it's just when you look at people who want a no-deal Brexit, I think I've talked about this before, but there was recently a poll, and like their number one policy platform thing that they want is bring back the death penalty, and then number 2 is blue passports, and then number 3 is go back to old incandescent light bulbs. Like, they're insane, and what they're politically engaged with is basically this weird fantasy where if they Brexit hard enough, their dad, who's dead now, will love them as much as he loved Winston Churchill.
I just want to know, like, what other like old timey British things that like old ass British people want to bring back and hope Brexit is going to bring back. Like,
So I learned something about fucking.
bring back tin sardines as well, and
Yeah,
bring back Werther's Originals. The Americans took that, and damn it, my grandfather really enjoyed those things.
Milo was commenting about how in the 70s you could drink beer out of a paint tin. You get huge paint tins of beer in this country. But another one that really blew my mind, and this actually may still exist, I don't think so, but it definitely existed up through like the 70s and 80s, is there was a job called being a hod carrier, which basically was, it was like a pallet that you wore on your shoulder that had a single pole that you could balance on the ground, and your job was on like a construction site to carry bricks up to the brick masons, and all day all you did was just climb with this fucking pallet of bricks on your shoulder. And apparently in the olden days when football players weren't that well paid, that was like their off-season job, was like to stay fit, was just carrying fucking bricks. So maybe they'll go back to that. Who knows?
The British are trying to like recreate Mary Poppins as a country. It's like, oh, we just need a drunk American with a horrible Cockney accent to come out here and sing about being a chimney sweep. And everything will be fine again. Then we can do racism. There weren't any black people in Mary Poppins, and therefore, other than the accidental blackface from being a chimney sweep.
Exactly. You know what? In the grand scheme of things, back in those days, we didn't call it blackface. It was just being a chimney sweep. Yeah. So the thing that I would point out too is that we'll notice this with Brexit, and we definitely notice it in America, that some people have had to scurry away from the sinking ship. And although in our hearts we want them to be completely fucking destroyed and have to like, you know, live in exile, like in a cave of the patriarchs or some shit on a mountain somewhere that no one can get to, instead they're just going about their business, grifting or moving on with their lives. For example, Reince Priebus, he's become a Navy ensign, which is a second lieutenant at the ripe old age of 47.
This is fantastic. Like, I read this and I thought, you know, I didn't realize how old he was. Like, he's a chief of staff, because like Stephen Miller, you know, our racist in chief, he's only like 32, right? So I thought
he's 33. I think he's a year younger than me, and I'm 34.
Yeah, he's young though. He
looks like Popeye the Sailor had fucking chemotherapy, but he's actually quite young.
That's actually what Popeye's arms were tumors. They were not actually muscles. Has anybody ever seen forearm muscles like that? No, they're fucking tumors. Rinse Penis here, who was a
pause. I got to say this just in case you've forgotten. Before Twitter deleted Roger Stone's account, there were like 150 separate instances of him adding Reince Priebus and just saying "rinse penis." Like, he did that like basically once a day for a year.
Imagine being the parents of Reince Priebus and thinking, well, our last name is Priebus, so that's going to be hard enough. Let's just really make it sound like he's just a dude that's really into dick washing. Maybe that'll make him more attractive to women. I don't know. So Reince has decided to join the Navy. Apparently, the Navy has this thing where you can do a direct commission, which, like, sure, you know, you don't have to go through all the, you know, the hullabaloo of learning how to lead troops or anything like that. They just make you an officer because you have a degree, which like is pretty much how it works. Other than, you know, you had to go through, you know, getting yelled at for 12 weeks, and do push-ups and whatnot, but not Reince, because he's 47, and that man probably showed up with like 4 different kind of PT profiles.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's becoming. This is amazing. There were 42 other candidates the Navy evaluated for direct commissions as adjutants, basically as human resource people. I think that term in the Navy, and correct me if I'm wrong, fucking squids. I think it's yeoman is what they call them, but I could be wrong. I just remember that dealing with the Navy's insane rank system and how like everything's a different code depending on your MOS. It's bizarre, but I'm pretty sure that's the adjutant equivalent. So apparently there were 42 candidates and he was one of 5 that were selected. I'm sure that was just because he fucking did it on merit. I'm sure they had, much like Amy Chua's daughter getting clerking for fucking Brett Kavanaugh, it had nothing to do with anything else.
Well, but here's the thing. So, you know, he did get letters of recommendation from Jim Mattis and like 40 other senators or whatever. So obviously, you know, being a White House chief of staff gave him some leverage here. But like he's becoming an HR guy. Like what merit do you need? Like other this is literally one of those like buying your rank, becoming an officer because you bought your rank. Like and he's going to become S1. I don't even know if that dude has HR experience based on what they need. All I know is that if my ass was working in an office like as an enlisted dude and a 47-year-old fucking O butterbar walked in and decided to be like, "Yeah, I'm going to be, in charge
Hi
here."
guys, I'm your new adjutant.
Right. It's just like, no, man. And he did it. He said that he saw his sister join the Navy and he was so proud of her and he wanted to do something like that himself and he's getting the opportunity to. And Reince is going to be the most irritating fucking veteran at this point. He's going to be that guy who's just like always who's like every Army Navy game is like full on, go Navy beat Army. He's going to be that guy who is like, hand on hip every time there's a hint of a person not standing for the national anthem. He's going to be the guy that who like seeks out fucking that mission barbecue place and stays for 4 hours so he can respect the flag more than everybody else because now I'm a Navy officer and now I mean something. Like this is the biggest fucking step back that I've ever seen specifically to get valor. Like this dude, some people like earn valor, some people, join the military and do, whatever they can to get their valor. This dude literally bought valor. And grease handed his way to get that valor, which I'm honestly like I'm impressed by. And go rinse, go rinse penis. Not only as a Navy person, but also please go wash yourselves.
Also, I mean, let's be perfectly honest. There's a reason why people like Jack Posevich and Reince Priebus become Navy officers and not Army officers. For one, because I think it's easier to do a direct commission for something like this. I in the Army, as I understand it, and I might be wrong here. I know they need bodies as ever. I'm pretty sure that you still have to go through a more competitive process and that they typically are looking for people who have like medical skills. Like when I met people who were very obviously direct commission because they had zero military bearing, they were typically O5s and O6s because they were doctors. So having been big wet baby president's chief of staff probably doesn't. I mean, even to be an Army AG officer, I get the impression that it probably would be slightly more complicated. Maybe I'm wrong. To be honest, my mom got direct commission, but that was back in the 70s, and she had a degree in biology, and they offered her a direct commission in the Chemical Corps. So, I mean, I don't know what it's like now. That's 40 odd years ago. So, but I think there's a reason why Reince Priebus and Jack Posevich and people like that become Navy officers, which is that being a Navy officer is fucking cake compared to being an officer in other branches. And I would also say that I mean, being in the Air Force is probably more cake than being an Army or Marine Corps officer, but holy shit, being in every Navy officer I've ever met, it seems like they live their life completely removed from the troops, if you know what I mean. Like they live in a world where they're only in officers' messes and they're only doing like officer things together, and like it's completely segregated. And so as such, he's only going to be with like 23-year-old Georgetown graduates and Naval Academy graduates who are his fellow officers. Like he's probably never going to have to go talk to like Big Chief.
Yeah, it does it, and I don't know if it's because on ship there's just a bigger division, I guess, of between the officers and the enlisted. Like the Navy really does take that, like, I don't know if it's just a fraternization thing, but like where the Army thinks that it does tradition, the Navy is like steeped in like we wish that we still had sails, you motherfuckers. I wish I could put a tomahawk onto a main staff and shoot it off. I don't want this. Like the Navy loves tradition. There's nothing more like irritating than a person with a boat. Like, and that goes to the fucking Navy as well, man. Everybody who like is near some sort of like water vessel on a regular basis for their job ends up turning into, like some sort of like the tradition, handed down. I fished these. I fucking killed whales out here. My dad came out here on a boat and shot brown people too. God damn it. There's, I don't know what it is about, being Navy specific. Coasties seem okay, but the Navy seems real weird about that kind of stuff. And
I guess it's maybe just because they're like, if the officers and the sailors got to be friends, then maybe they might mutiny the next time that like the senior officers decide like, hey guys, we're gonna not sleep for 4 days and crash into another boat in the Sea of Japan.
yeah, the Navy. You know what? It could be also because the Navy continues is just like constantly has to fire their officers for like massive impropriety and being like completely horrible human beings. Such as recently we have
It's
another.
like there's this guy in Macau named Wide Reginald, and everyone seems to have like gotten a Rolex from him in the last 30 years. We would fire all of the squadron commanders involved, but unfortunately, every single one of them is complicit, all the way down to like their senior chiefs. We don't know what's going on, but every time we try to fire someone, the paperwork gets lost because Wide Reginald bought the entire U.S. Navy. You think I'm joking, but that's basically Fat Leonard. Like, it went so far up to the top that they couldn't do anything about it because people kept losing the paperwork or losing the files because everyone was complicit.
Yep. And it seems like every time Fat Leonard had something happen, there would be another person would get fucking caught up, and there'd be another just like I think like what, like 60% of the Navy's flag officers like got caught up in this thing because like here's the thing why you don't have this problem in the Army, right? In the Army, where are your Army bases? In the middle of fucking nowhere, where there's no fun to be had. So the only thing that an officer, a leader of troops, has at their disposal is to just be a massive dickhead and get really into being an officer and leading troops and whatnot. But you're in
And the biggest trouble that most officers get into in the Army is weird sex things. Next in line would be not weird sex things, but adulterous sex things. And after that, maybe stuff like getting in trouble because they turned a blind eye to soldiers, NCOs under their command, stealing property.
Yeah,
those are the things that officers typically get in trouble for.
Yeah, the army fucks because that's the only thing we have.
I suppose if you really wanted to get into it, I'm sure if somebody went wild digging, could find some skullduggery involving, say, the Prince Hall Masons. But most of that stuff is so low level, and typically the things people get in trouble for are one of those three things that I just named.
So
even if it's the Masons who are involved, it's still weird sex, adulterous sex, or like stealing property.
Which, like, yeah, and that's the only thing that the Army has is fucking and stealing. But like the Navy, it seems they go to all these ports and they just lose their goddamn minds. I don't know if it's they have too much freedom when they're out and about, or it's just like they're cooped up so long that once you do let them go, like you just fucking you take a destroyer of troops, of Navy troops, and shake it really hard, and then just like, all right, go fucking destroy Australia for 3 days, like with whoring and drinking.
But also, it's like everybody in the Navy has a bag that they can sneak past customs. Basically,
right.
Like that's my thought. Is that everyone, from the lowliest seamen all the way up to like the captains and admirals and rear admirals and such. It's like someone at some point has been like, "Hey man, I got this bag. Could you carry it for me? I'll give you $100." And it just gets exponentially more and more expensive. And that mentality has just bled through to the point where it's like everyone's got a stash, everyone's got a thing, like a scam they got going on. I mean, I'm winging it here because I mean my experience with the Navy is relatively limited. I had one or two good Navy NCOs, a couple of terrible Navy NCOs, and then on a few extra like combined joint exercises, I worked with Navy officers who were just weird. But I liked. I mean, the chief petty officers I worked with in Afghanistan were good. There was one YN1, which I guess it's a petty officer first class yeoman, who's a fucking weirdo, but. Long story short, like the Navy, I don't really have a ton of experience because I've gone to a lot of landlocked countries. But that being said, like my impression is that everyone is kind of segregated into like their rank spot based on the way that the system works on the boat, and then also that officers are just weirdos, and that officers, their job is to be really good with a map and compass or whatever the equivalent is, for navigating a boat. But if they look like Waldo from the Where's Waldo books and, talk in a really weird voice with their eyes downcast and their hands in their pockets when they're addressing the troops, no one cares. Because it's just like, whatever, his job is to be like the navigation math nerd. Big Chief actually makes the boat run.
Yeah, well, I'm sure once this comes out, Amber will either confirm or deny all of our suspicions. Amber is the one Navy person we know.
Amber, if you know anybody in the Navy who winds up figuring like that in their S1 shop or their adjutant shop that Reince Priebus becomes their whatever officer. Let us know because we want to interview people. Because for one thing, I'm convinced that Reince Priebus is going to talk like even if I've heard his voice in real life. I think that's his TV voice, and in real life he's just like, well, I am in charge. So I really want to know.
He sounds like, a mix between like a worried British like colonel and Wario.
He's basically grown up Millhouse.
I hope, God willing, the creek don't rise. Maybe he's going to be a good officer and he'll be quiet and he'll sit down and do whatever. But also, all of his like commissioning photos were taken with like the vice president, and I'm just seeing like some I don't what is a lieutenant in the Navy is an O3. So whatever their O3 is, like having that guy come in and just be like, oh cool, I got fucking Hollywood over here. I got the rock star. And I just hope like my hope one is that Reince is an okay officer and does his job and shuts the fuck up and moves on. My other hope is that he ends up with like an O3 that just absolutely hates him from day one and it's just like, hey, guess what? I outrank you and you have to literally do everything I tell you to do. So when I tell you to go fuck off and suck shit, guess what you're going to go do?
Speaking of the Navy, we just had a nice little discussion here about Reince Priebus and obviously Fat Leonard. But apparently you don't need Fat Leonard to be a weird dumbass in the United States Navy because the AP has conducted an investigation, and this is the headline. A Navy admiral under investigation for free hugs, Twister games, and a margarita machine in his office. Apparently, the commander of the U.S. Naval War College.
The War College, Nate. The War College. This isn't a boat. This isn't a carrier. This is like a literal like war college where you go to listen to Max Boot tell you things about war. And this man is smirching the War College.
It says that dozens of emails and other documents obtained by the Associated Press show the college has struggled to make payroll under Harley's leadership and has spent about $725,000 annually on raises, while facing an annual shortfall of $5 million or more. Harley also has sent a series of emails to hundreds of students, faculty, and staff that raised eyebrows, including offers of free hugs and games of Twister in his office. I also think that I want to get to the part about the margarita machine. Yeah, so I don't know how to say this. What the fuck? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like this isn't quite Wyatt Reginald territory, but it's still pretty weird. I mean, I'm surprised that even though the guy's an admiral, I'm surprised that the Navy granted somebody autonomy to have that much control over payroll, considering how most of the stuff works. But who knows? I mean, the Navy's a weird place. It's a boat. They love goats. I don't know what their deal is.
This is incredible for a couple reasons. I mean, one, it's kind of funny on the surface, but also, we've been discussing for the longest time. The military's been discussing. We've yelled about it. Everybody's yelled about it. About how the military has massive problems with sexual harassment and sexual assault, and it's people say like it's getting better, but really what's happening is more people are willing to admit that it's happening rather than actually do anything about it. So when people say like it's getting we're taking steps, like all we're really doing is like finding out more people have been assaulted than we originally thought. Now this guy's a rear admiral. Which, I mean, this is a high rank. This is a general, but for the Navy. So this is and in charge, like the president of the War College, and just doing these things. And the thing is that like this isn't. I guarantee you, and anybody who knows anything about people who do sexual assault and sexual harassment will tell you 100%. This isn't the first time. And somehow this fucking fail son of a Navy boy managed to get up to becoming the president of the War College without any of this coming until now when he's just like sending out like, I want free hugs. Like when this dude was an O3, there wasn't just like, he was a great officer and was never inappropriate to anybody. It was just more well hidden. And then like he got to a point where he's just like, I'm an admiral and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And then it's like, well, you got to pump the brakes now, man. You can't just like steal money. You can't just like, tell people you want to do Twister while drinking margaritas in your office. Like the idea of a margarita machine in the office doesn't really, bother me because fuck, man, every, MASH and whatever, all these stuff, the where you have these commanding officers and generals that have like a bottle of bourbon or whiskey in their office. Like, it's fine. A margarita machine is actually kind of cooler. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I can respect that.
right, like for me, it would be a bottle of fucking Costco vodka and and some sparkling water. It's just be like, I don't know.
Can I get into some details on this?
Sure.
Because it's actually really funny.
Yeah.
So the longer AP article that on this topic, among the other allegations made with the Inspector General's office is that Harley drinks on duty. The employees allege that Harley has a margarita machine in his office and that he, quote, moves the machine to suit his mood, unquote, sometimes to a dining area for school leaders. Quote, he has invited members of the staff to his office for afternoon drinks, setting his employees up to either comply because he's the boss or uncomfortably decline his offer because they do not want to drink during the workday, unquote, the staffers said during their complaint. Harley has also sent campus-wide emails inviting people to his office for a game of Twister, in which players can twerk around one another on a mat, or free hugs if desired. Workers called his often rambling emails unbecoming of an admiral and said they left people wondering how Harley was spending his time and school resources. In an email sent May 12th, Harley boasted about a new portrait of himself painted on velvet. He attached photos showing the picture hanging in a campus building among those of other college presidents. In this picture I'm just describing, he's a bald man who's clean shaven. This photo has him looking like Ernest Hemingway with a huge pompadour and a gigantic beard. Quote, he preferred cats, Star Trek, red wine, baseball, and was positively obsessed with achieving the perfect hair day, unquote, according to a label he said mounted with a picture. Harley, who is bald, said the portrait was made by a professor who paid for it himself and gave it to Harley as a joke. He said it called it a way to poke fun at himself. This guy kind of rules. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This guy kind of fucking kicks ass.
That's I mean, if only other officers in the military were like, so wait, is there any like in this, is there any sexual harassment or sexual assault or anything like that?
I think it's not sexual harassment, sexual assault. Obviously, it made people uncomfortable.
Sure.
Obviously, he was drinking on duty. I think I'm going to read the other paragraph that talks about some of the payroll stuff, which I think you could actually
have a problem
conceive of there being some wrongdoing here. So I'm going to read these paragraphs. Previously an assistant deputy chief of naval operations in Washington, Harley assumed command in July 2016 at the postgraduate institution, which graduates about 1,600 students each year and employs around 700 faculty and staff. Harley himself acknowledged in a campus email in February that the school had to make across-the-board cuts to ensure it met payroll. Just last week, he asked for more cutbacks in travel budgets. All 5 current and former employees blamed that in part on substantial raises, this being the people in the complaint, as much as $10,000 to $15,000 per year, that Harley appeared to grant unilaterally to some faculty rather than consulting the college's other senior leaders as is customary. Harley has told staff and faculty in emails this spring that the college was remedying pay gaps between men and women, balancing pay between departments, and creating a system to avoid future disparities. The employees also complain that Harley has hired unqualified people to high-paying jobs, sometimes exploiting a federal rule meant to allow colleges to quickly hire qualified professors. They questioned Harley's spending of tens of thousands of dollars on certain contractors and others who they said brought little benefit to the college. So, on one hand, this could be like flat-out weird nepotism. His defense, I'm sure, sounds good, and that's the thing. I mean, if I was defending myself from hiring my friends, I'd be like, oh, I'm just balancing pay across genders. So I get it. I mean, he may be a sleazeball, may be shady. But, I mean, there are elements of this that's like, wow, this guy kind of rules, even if he's apparently a terrible boss and sucks at his job.
I mean, but is he a terrible boss at this point? Like now it sounds like he's kind of, okay, look, the Twister and the free hugs thing, I don't know what context it's in, but I understand that being making people uncomfortable.
He also apparently he says he was joking about Twister, and there is actually no Twister board in his office. He just was. It sounds as though he's claiming he was making a joke, because obviously it would be very absurd for you at the Naval War College to go hang out with the commandant and play Twister in his office.
Right, and I think where he fails on that one is that Twister is kind of an inherently sexual game.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of like
he should have said Mousetrap or something. Like that's what I would have gone with.
And play Connect 4 with me.
Yeah,
or something
come on over. We'll drink some margaritas and get down on some Candyland. But like really
fucking rocked on margaritas and playing Boggle.
But to be fair, like all of those, when you're like an '07, when you send an email like let's drink margaritas and play X child's board game, sounds very sexual indeed. So like I'm trying to think of one like Operation Scrabble. Maybe if he said risk, I think, because then at least it's war college-esque, and we call it. You could audit it as a class, like getting shit hammered on margaritas and playing Risk.
Yeah, they break you down into seminars. Everyone has to come in and has to down a pitcher of margaritas and then play Stratego. And whoever's the best player, that's going to be the honors list. That's just how it works.
Shit, can you imagine? No, here's what we do. Here's how he should have spent all that money. He should have gotten really high-end video gaming machines and gotten everybody to play Civ 6.
Here's the thing that gets me too. When I was in the Special Forces course, it was really early. Like, it was actually before I PCS to brag for the actual Q course, but rather when I finished selection. At the time, whomever the equivalent commander, I don't know, he was an 06, and I don't think he was like a staff officer at the U.S. God, that's such a stupid acronym. The JFK Special Warfare Center, but literally, if you look at the JFK Special Warfare Center, their acronym is USAJFKSWIX, because USK, USA, JFK, SW, C, and S. So the United States of America, John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Course and School, USAJFKSWIX.
That's some Jabberwocky shit right there.
I know, it's amazing, right? Anyway, this guy came down to our class after we'd all been selected, and we were getting briefings on what to expect next. Because obviously for officers, it was different than for enlisted, but they just gave us a one-size-fits-all briefing. And this guy came in and was basically going on about how, this is a colonel in uniform, about how we need to sharpen our skills because we're going to have to use them to take down our own government someday because Obama was a tyrant. And we're like, bro, you're in the army. What the fuck are you talking about? But I mean, that kind of shit's normal. You'll see some in schools. There's times when some insane senior officers just come in and just do weird shit. So in the grand scheme of things, margaritas and Twister isn't that weird to me. But I could see how it might be, like you said, Francis, that's inherently sexual. So obviously that's going to come across as very untoward. But the Ernest Hemingway beard and pompadour is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it really it feels like he's kind of a maybe a fun boss. Maybe he is somebody who's just like, hey, let's relax. We're having fun. Let's and also I'm going to redistribute some of this wealth to my people. See, if only he had given the janitorial staff $10,000 raises. Then he would have been at least a hero to the left. But unfortunately, he probably gave it to himself and his buddies.
I know, right? He probably hired Tom Nichols. That's why we aren't hearing anything from Radio Free Tom, because Tom Nichols actually does play Twister with him, getting fucked up on margaritas. Him and John Schindler, they've gotten hired as special internet warfare specialists. And so they all hang out in Harley's office on Fridays. He made the invitation to all the students, but secretly everyone knows don't go there because it's just John Schindler and Tom Nichols with this guy playing Twister and getting drunk.
And Max Boot, you got to have Max Boot there too.
Oh yeah, Max Boot's there too. Max Boot's definitely there. Yeah,
Max Boot's the one who's spinning it and telling them right foot on red, and running the margarita machine.
So let's be perfectly honest though. This might be indicative of a larger problem because margaritas are great. They're fucking amazing. But margaritas are not necessarily good for you, both because of the alcohol content and the amount of tequila you put in, among other things, as well as the amount of sugar.
Oh, it's so terrible for you.
Yeah, they're bad for you. But imagine all of the nutritional problems of a margarita minus the alcohol, but with some weird stimulants, and you've got energy drinks. Now, soldiers love energy drinks, and they love fucking smoking and dipping, and they love terrible fast food. I mean, who doesn't? But the problem is, a recent study has determined that soldiers on average have worse heart health than civilians, says the Journal of the American Heart Association report.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this headline, or I'm going to read this opening paragraph, or two paragraphs. Active duty Army personnel have worse cardiovascular health compared to people of similar ages in the civilian population, according to new research in the Journal of the American Heart Association, the open access journal of the American Heart Association / American Stroke Association. Researchers compared a group of more than 263,000 active duty Army soldiers between ages 18 and 64, between the ages of 17 and 64, who had a health examination in 2012 with a similar group of U.S. civilians participating in the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey in the same period. The groups were evaluated on 4 criteria: current tobacco smoking, weight, blood pressure, and diabetes, which represent 4 of the 7 health factors and behaviors that correspond to the American Heart Association's definition of ideal cardiovascular health. Army data as of 2012 were not sufficient to assess the remaining 3 metrics: diet, score, physical activity, and total blood cholesterol. The Army's findings, correction, the study's findings were contrary to the researchers' initial assumption that because of the Army's health screenings of potential recruits and emphasis on maintaining good physical condition, more soldiers and civilians would meet criteria that indicate ideal cardiovascular health. The quote, "We had expected that the percentage of ideal weight in the Army group would have been much higher because of the fitness standards to get into the Army and the physical aspects of the job," said one of the researchers. "It is notable that we didn't see the advantage we expected in the Army group, and it's clear that both groups have a lot of room for improvement."
You know what this is, Nate? This is that civilian military divide where civilians think that, like, one, that we don't take in disgusting, gross people who have horrible health, and two, think that, oh, you're a soldier, so you must be like do physical activity a lot. Like a vast majority of soldiers don't really do a whole lot of moving around during the day.
Well, yeah, and once you're past a certain rank, or especially if you're not in certain MOSs, you've got to do a PT test, but it's probably going to be graded by people in your unit. So I mean, it's weird. It's weird how people can be in bad shape and still get like 190s or 210s and still pass.
Well,
it's funny how that works.
But also at a certain age, like it's not hard to pass a PT test. Like the current PT test. We're going to move over to this ACFT pretty soon, and we'll see how that one goes. But like the current PT test, man, you just got to do a couple of push-ups and a couple of sit-ups, and you can get your 180 on that one. Like it's not hard. I say this as a 36-year-old male who does not have any problems passing a PT test, even though like what I do is I walk my dog, and also like the month before a PT test, every other day I do some push-ups and some sit-ups and manage to score like a 220 with no issue. So it's not that hard, but also like it's the whole health screening thing. Like the ages that you quoted were between 17 and 64. So they're saying, well, there's a health screening that the military does, but we do that health screening when people join, when they're generally 18 years old. When you get to my ripe old age, after you've been in for almost 20 years. Now, if I was active duty, my body would probably be way more broken down than it currently is. And that's therein lies your problem, is that the military fucks with your body. It fucks with your psyche. Talk to anybody who's a regular fucking airborne jumper. Like, beyond the 5 jumps that you have to do for your airborne badge, the people who have to jump regularly, those people have fucked up knees and backs. And guess what? They probably drink to self-medicate, or they have to be on other kinds of pills and whatnot. And they probably eat junk food, because guess what? Being in the Army is also real fucking depressing.
So apparently I have to do 36 push-ups in 2 minutes. I have to do, I have to do 42 sit-ups in 2 minutes. And I have to run, 1742
Yep.
for 2 miles.
Yep.
Now, I can do that without a problem, even though I cycle a lot. I don't really work out that much anymore. I definitely don't know if I would pass. I would need to be taped. I think I would pass tape, but I don't know, because who knows? I have no idea what the standard is anymore. And quite frankly, I am free from that shit. But I will say that I've seen some people who are in way worse shape than me who've managed to stay on active duty. So whomst even knows?
Yeah, this this thing from the Heart Association, like I said, the thing that stood out to me was their assumption that the military has physical standards, and we do, but also there are people in my unit who have not passed the PT test in a couple of years. So I saw people to pass basic training. You only have to score 50 on all 3 of the events. So you don't even have to be able to pass a regular PT test that you would have to normally pass in the real Army. In basic training, they're like, well, all the running, the push-ups and sit-ups that we make you do, but we're also going to lower the standards to let you pass for some fucking insane reason. Mostly because they don't want to have to recycle your ass at the end of it.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's much cheaper to just boot you out into the real Army and then hope that there's an NCO out there who's going to fix you, which maybe not, probably not. So yeah, the American Heart Association making some real big fucking assumptions here with soldier health. And I mean, I get it. I get why you would think that, because every soldier that the army puts out onto one of its insane propaganda videos is always like, square jawed troops that are, running through and kicking doors and being, doing push ups and being real fit. But like when you get out into the real army, it's just normal ass people. Like it's not even that we have like some sort of like, oh, this says we have worse heart, which I believe, because being in the army is inherently more taxing on your body, like regardless of the whether you're an office job or not. In the military, it's still taxing to be in the military. I mean, your normal like fucking tax professional or whatever does not have to sit around and wonder, am I going to be having to go out into the field for a month? Who's going to take care of my kids? Is my spouse going to cheat on me? Do I have to go to war and get shot at? Like, a normal civilian doesn't have those worries. So I get it, but also like, we're in the military, we're no better or worse than anybody else out there. Like, we take a lot of people in, we cycle them through. Sometimes people go through basic training and they're like hot shit and they're really great, physically and everything. And then, hell, man, you hit 25 and you're just like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to slow down a little bit. Or I hit 30. Or you hit those, you get out of the infantry, right? Where you're, drinking every day and eating fucking shitty pizza every day, but you're also burning off 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, doing your normal field work. And then you go off and it's like, oh, I'm going to go become something else. Like, I'm going to go become PAO. And then you get real fat because guess what? We don't move around that much, but you're still drinking and eating like you used to. So, there's just really a lot of factors that the military plays into something like this. And it's interesting because there's all this legislation to push the minimum smoking age up to 21, and the military, like, I think California already did that, but they made exceptions for the military. But now Mitch McConnell and company are trying to push it up to 21 and make no exceptions whatsoever. It's going to be 21 and up, which is very strange to me for Republicans, but also like smoking is disgusting and bad. Like, and I say that as an ex-smoker. So I'm all about like getting that away from kids as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that in terms of pure mercenary self-interest on the part of the military, it's in their best interests to not have more soldiers smoking, considering how common smoking is and how bad it is for you. And also how, I mean, I think that I smoked for years and I also was a really fast runner. My experience was that if you're doing PT and you're smoking, it's not good, but it doesn't necessarily correspond with a worse run time. However, if you go through a period of your life where you're not really working out, but you're still smoking, you absolutely will get a worse run time. Like, it'll be fucking shit. And so in that regard, I definitely think that it's in their best interest. And I don't know, I'm not really sympathetic to the argument that you're depriving them of rights, because I mean, nicotine's bad for you. It's bad for your health. There's no net positive of using it. But also I think that, to be honest, if you're going to look at this stuff, you also have to look at things like well, for one, you're going to have to look at things like e-cigarettes. You're going to have to look at things like energy drinks, which are also bad for you. You're going to have to look at the sort of binge drinking culture in the military. There are a lot of factors that influence things that are going to lead to, negative heart health or negative health across the board. And I mean, it's weird because I was an infantryman. I was an airborne infantryman, and at least I don't know if airborne school got easier or got more like just a pass-through school. But when I went to airborne school in 2005, I mean, we ran pretty quickly. It was hotter than fuck. We did PT every day. The PT was not easy. I mean, I don't recall it being particularly easy. Every time we went to go get meals, we had to do 10 chin-ups. 10 chin-ups on the way into the chow hall, 10 chin-ups on the way out of the chow hall. People failed. I mean, the class got thinned out. We lost a lot of people on the PT tester in the first week. People who fell out of runs and stuff. So, I mean, and I got to my first unit in the beginning of 2008. So it was less than 3 years after I went to airborne school, because I went in the summer of 2005. And to be honest with you, I mean, we didn't necessarily have super stud soldiers. I mean, yeah, they typically passed the PT test, but that didn't mean that they were like fucking jacked and like super good runners or super good at doing whatever. I mean, they were basically 19-year-olds who had stamina, but it was like dumb strength. And probably didn't make it any better by being fucking rocked out of their mind, on alcohol basically every night of the week after 6 p.m. So if you look at this stuff, I mean, I don't think that it's fair to assume that people in the military are like super athletes. In fact, I don't really recall encountering a ton of super athletes even when I was in the Special Forces course. Like, people, obviously you had to meet the minimum standard, which in the SFQ course was, it ramped up. I mean, it started, you had to be like, to pass at SFAS, you have to pass at least the minimum standard you have to do. I mean, you obviously want to do more than that, but you have to do 60 in each event. In the Q course, one of the record PT tests, you have to do at least 70 in each event. And I want to say, to graduate, or at the time it might have changed, there was a PT test in which you had to do 80 in each event. But even then, that's, you can train for that. But that's not 300. That's not extended scale for everyone. People are like, oh, if you're an officer in the infantry, you got to be on the extended scale. You're going to be in a staff job. It's like, if we did that, there would be 0 platoon leaders. Like, I'm sorry. There would be like 30 platoon leaders who all went to like West Point, who are just like fucking beasts, and then nobody else could be a platoon leader. It's in the same way with like, if you don't have a ranger tab, you won't be a platoon leader. It's like, well, that wasn't my experience. I had a tab, but a lot of guys in my unit didn't. Or at least like a couple, and the couple who didn't have it still got to be fucking platoon leaders. So I mean, it really depends. I definitely, though, like, just believe that notion that you're going to go into the sort of assessment of heart health thinking people in the military are going to be in better health than people in the civilian world. I mean, I really think that you have to control for certain factors. And quite frankly, most people in the military could be in better shape. And also, a lot of people in perfect honesty, most people I know who were like the best athletes I ever encountered in high school and college didn't join the military. So it's such a broad spectrum. It's really hard to nail it down and say like, okay, because you went to basic training, you're going to be in better shape. Your heart's going to be in better shape. It's like, well, I mean, I think a private in Ranger Regiment is probably going to be in pretty good shape. A private in like the South Carolina National Guard might not.
Right. Especially after, basic training, and then you go home because you're National Guard and you don't have somebody yelling at you every day to get up and go do PT. So that's going to do it for us this week. Our bonus episode is myself and Riley, Ms_Riley /_GURPS. You can find her on Twitter. She and I discuss West Point and Star Trek, in which we go through all the Star Trek races and decide which one is the most fascist and which one is the most communist. It was a fun conversation. I love to talk about Star Trek, so it is a chance for me to spread my nerd wings on that one. We also have our YouTube channel. I'm getting back to doing my weekly updates on that, but also pretty soon we're going to have some of our zine stuff. If you're not a member of the Patreon, but you wanted to get your hands on our Gadsden flag or buttons and things like that, we're going to have those available. So that will be coming out pretty soon. Everybody already got their, well, my overseas people didn't yet, but all of my local people did get their zines and enjoying them. We're getting a lot of great feedback. So if you want to get in on the next one, if you want to get those sent to you, the $10 Patreon level. Otherwise, if you want to get the actual zine itself, a digital copy of it, you just need to be a Patreon. Any Patreon at any level will get that a PDF. So make sure if you do want to read that you're checking your email. That should be coming out this week. If you're not a Patreon, patreon.com/hellofawaydie, and give us them ducats if you can. But if you cannot, all the support that you guys give us is great and wonderful and fantastic, and we appreciate everything that you do for us. We appreciate that you continue to support us and that we continue to be able to come up here and make jokes about a guy with a margarita machine playing Stratego in his office. Because honestly, what's the American dream other than that, Nate? I posit that there is nothing more dreamy than that.
There really is not. I mean, whom among us has not spent 30 plus years in the Navy with the sole goal of having weird margarita twister in your office and having a velvet painting of yourself looking like Ernest Hemingway and Elvis put together? Who knows? You know what? There are a lot of dreams out there, but if that one is yours, that's why you join the military.
Exactly.
It's all long-term focus.
All right, everybody. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. See ya.